Hello boys and girls, hope you've really enjoyed the week and I hope that you have engaged with your lessons really well. Hope you've worked very hard, whether it be here at school or at home. Hope also you've taken some time to engage with this week's challenge. Really important you get those challenges back into us. We'll see the results of that in assembly on Monday, but it's of course building watercraft, your navigational skills that we're testing out this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing those. I know Mr. Stigand, who's looking after our weekly challenges, also is very keen to see this week's entries. So, starting today's assembly, we've got, first of all, a piece of music. Hamza is going to play for us. So, Hamza, it's over to you now. Hamza, well done. Great work on the clarinet there. Clown Dance, that piece of music was called. So a little bit different this assembly today. I'm going to look at a painting with you. I know that we have looked at paintings quite regularly in our assemblies when we're at school, but it's the first time that I've done that with you while we're doing one of our online assemblies. Now our painting concerns a famous person, George Washington, the very first president of the United States. It's a brilliant painting. I hope you're going to enjoy the little presentation I've got for you just right now. But one or two things about George Washington. George was a really important person in the history of the United States because, first of all, he was a general. He worked in the army of the Continental Army, it was called, fighting against the British. Americans at that time were rather annoyed by the way that the English were running the colonies, running America, and they felt that they had a real grievance. He felt it very strongly, and George Washington was the person who led the Continental Army eventually to victory in 1781 against the English, and America got their independence. Of course, everybody was so pleased with the work that George Washington had done that he became the first president of the United States. Didn't live in the White House. The White House was not then the home of the American presidents. He was president in New York first and then in Philadelphia. He had 2 terms of office, so 8 years as president and before he retired. So our painting, it's called Washington Crossing the Delaware. Pretty much all American boys and girls will have seen this painting. So here is our presentation. Hope you enjoy this painting as much as I do. So we're going to look at a painting called Washington Crossing the Delaware by a painter called Emanuel Leutzer. He was a German who emigrated with his family to the United States in the 19th century, and this painting was painted in 1851. So here's our painting. George Washington is right at the front of the boat. He's crossing a river called the River Delaware, and this is a really important episode in American history. It's set in the American War of Independence. The Americans were fighting against the English for their independence, and this incident took place on the night of December the 25th to December the 26th, 1776. It's early in the morning. You can see that by the morning star right in the top of the picture here on the left-hand side, and it's dawn. Now you can see the dawn breaking on Washington himself. Washington's the man at the front of the boat, next to the man with the flag, and they're crossing a very cold river. It was frozen over at that particular time, and Washington had to cross the river to engage the British forces, and this was to surprise them. No one thought it was possible for a group of soldiers to cross the river at this point. There's no bridge or anything like that, and it was a great act of surprise. I love this painting because it's such a dramatic painting. I'm going to show you another version of it. Now this version is a bit more light, so you can see a bit more of what's in the actual painting. So the lightened version isn't the real version, just so you can see all the people in the boat. And I'm going to talk about some of those people in a minute. They represent all of the people who were forming or about to form the new United States of America. So all sorts of different people are in that boat. We're going to talk about them all in a moment. But just look at the painting for a second, because it's such a great painting. You can just imagine that cold, can't you, in the water. It's a really big painting. Here it is in the Metropolitan Art Gallery in New York, and you can see some people in front of it. Just shows you how magnificent, how large this painting is, and how dramatic it must look if you stood in front of that. Lots of Americans come to visit this painting, because it was the first time that the Americans had defeated the British troops at the Battle of Trenton following this crossing, and it was one of the events that turned around the War of Independence. Before that, the English had defeated the Americans pretty much at every stage. Now there's George Washington. He was eventually to become the very first president of the United States. Rather stern-looking chap in that picture. One lesser-known fact about George Washington: his family came from the northeast of England. There's a town in the northeast of England called Washington, and Washington Old Hall is where his family came from. Americans are used to seeing his picture because he's the president on the $1 bill. There he is, George Washington, the same man right in the middle there. That's when he was president a little bit later on, the first president of the United States. There's another president in the picture, because the man holding the flag is James Monroe. He was later on to become president. He fought alongside Washington at the Battle of Trenton. Now that flag is incorrect. As you know, I quite like my flags. That flag did not come into being, the Stars and Stripes, until 1777. So Washington would not have crossed the river with that flag. Lots of Americans like to recreate the crossing. Here's some people recreating the crossing, and you can see that's the actual flag, the flag that would have been carried by Washington as he crossed the river, because the Stars and Stripes had not been put together at that time. So various people in the picture. There's two farmers who were fighting for the cause. One of them's been injured in a previous battle, but they are rather grimly crossing the river with Washington. And you can see some people at the front of the boat there. Three people I'm going to talk about now. One, a man with a Scottish hat. He's to show the fact that America at that time was full of people who'd come across from England and Scotland and Wales and so on, from Ireland. And they, of course, many of them fought alongside Washington to free the United States from English rule. Now, the man on the opposite side to him is a black American. Now, that quite unusual at the time. A lot of people reckon that that man was actually a slave at the time. There's lots of debate about who it might be. But it's just to show again that lots of people from different parts of America fought alongside Washington for independence. And the person at the front, some people argue that's a lady in a man's costume, but we don't really know. Nobody really knows. Lots of people talk about who that might be. At the back, we've got a Native American. You can tell by his costume and what he's wearing and his hat and so on. He's steering the boat from the back. So all sorts of different types of Americans are fighting alongside Washington for the cause. Sadly, the actual painting was destroyed in 1942 by Allied bombing of the city of Bremen. But there are two copies, one in the Metropolitan Art Gallery in New York. Now, why do I like this painting? I just think it's got such drama. I love the fact that it recreates that moment at the start of the day, crossing this really cold river. Hundreds of soldiers, you can see horses in the picture as well, crossing this river. This amazing episode in American history. And this brave group of people crossing because they wanted their freedom. They wanted to be free from British rule, and Washington was the man leading them through. It's a fantastic painting, so have a little look at it. I hope you like this painting as much as I do. So that's our painting. Hope you enjoyed that presentation. Huge painting, isn't it? Really big. All of those people are slightly bigger than life size in that painting. So we have a second piece of music now. Anya is going to be playing for us. Jazz Waltz Blues, this is called. And Anya, here you are. It's over to you now. Thank you to Anya for that fantastic performance. If you would like to be featured in Assembly, send your piece of music through to me, your recording. You might want to send me something that you've sung or something that you performed, or even if you like, if you want to send me through a poem that you know, a performance of a poem, perhaps a lambda piece that you'd like me to feature in Assembly, please send it through and I'd be really, really happy to include that as part of our Assembly. We're going to have a prayer now before we have our piece of music as we go out from Assembly. So our prayer, but we'll put our hands together for our prayer, please. Lord God, we thank you for all of the wonderful things that we've enjoyed this week. We thank you for the people who love us, the people we love. We work each and every day hard to make the most of our talents and to make you proud of us. Amen. So finally, I found a recording of a piece of music that we used in an assembly last year. So it's an old piece of music, but it's Jackie Wilson. I love Jackie Wilson. Your love keeps lifting me higher. And this features many of the scenes which were recorded around the school of children going about their normal Hawford business. And boys and girls, it will be lovely to see you back at school soon. Hopefully, we'll have a few more children back at school from the 22nd of June. It's a little while away. It's something to be excited about, as indeed is this piece of music. So Jackie Wilson is the final piece of music in our assembly. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I look forward to being part of your day again on Monday.
Your stand up and face the world. Let me tell